Hey, Preeti. Hey, Rob. How you guys doing?
Good. How you
Doing well. How about
doing?
yourself, Antonio? Good to see you, bud.
Yeah, I know. It feels like forever since we've all been out in San Diego together eating some Mr. Moto pizza. Feels like forever ago. But thanks for taking some time out of your busy schedules. I know you guys are super busy, but thanks for joining me tonight. And well, it's nighttime by me. I know out in San Diego, you're it's
Yeah,
late
we're still
evening, or not even
firmly in
late
the
evening, but
afternoon,
yeah, you're in
evening. Yeah.
afternoon. Yeah, there you go. But for those that are searching for their first job or their next job, I'd say that this is the talk for you. I know we've got a lot to cover, so we'll just jump right into it. Both Preeti and Rob are on a recruiting team, so they spend tons of time, really all their time, talking to employers and talking to different candidates and understanding, what employers are looking for, what candidates are looking for, and finding, the best way to put them to really match them together, so to speak. So I suppose I'm just going to throw out a question here and see what you guys think. But what is the first thing that optometrists should be doing when starting their job search?
So, I typically like to tell candidates that you should really get into that mindset that looking for a job is kind of like a full-time job in and of itself. You're going to be spending a lot of time, looking for jobs, interviewing, going in for interviews. So it really is like having a full-time job. So getting in that mindset, knowing that it's going to be something that you're going to have to be doing daily and checking in on and following up. It's a good thing to get that mindset. And I also recommend just kind of sitting down and really thinking about what it is you're looking for. Is it a private practice? Is it an ODMD practice? Is it a corporate practice? Really kind of knowing what you're looking for really will help you in your job search, because when you're looking for a job, you're not going to just start applying to everything. You kind of know what you're looking for. So that really helps. And of course, having your resume and CV up to date is a good thing as well. But Antonio, I wanted to ask, what was your job search like coming right out of school?
Oh, well, this is going back man, probably like 8 years ago. And I'm going to be totally honest with you guys. Like, there just were not the abundance of resources that there are today. Like Eyes On Eye Care, right? But yeah, there really weren't. And I know it doesn't seem like that long ago, 8 years, but if you really look, 8 years ago, there weren't all these resources. There really wasn't. So when I graduated, I'll be honest. I sent some emails. I picked up the phone, just called practices. I was really looking for a job in my home city, so I was
Mm.
limiting myself a good bit. Like, I wasn't looking in other areas, so that didn't help my situation. And I had a bit of a tough time, honestly, finding my first job. And I saw like an ad on a just a website. I like remember punching into Google and I saw something pop up, and it was for like 1 day a week. And I was like, okay, better than nothing. I've been looking for like a month and coming up with, not much. So I'll take it. So I did that. And then, as fate would have it, it turned into a full time job within like a month. So I got pretty fortunate there. But that was the pretty much what my job search was like. But I just remember I didn't really have a lot of direction, I didn't have a lot of help. And there really just wasn't a lot of resources, like I said, available. So could have used you guys back then.
Yeah, yeah. Wish we could have been there to help you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that actually is that leads me to another question though, and that is like, so I'm talking about my experience 8 years ago. So what would you guys say has been the biggest difference in the job search process between just this year and last year? Because yeah, 8 years, a lot has changed, but even just
Mhm.
within 1 year, a lot changes.
I mean, this year to last year, any year versus last year, you're gonna see a lot of change, a lot of difference. Um, last year it was a little bit bleak for a while, undoubtedly,
Hmm.
because of COVID, because of the adjustments, because of loss, etc. But we saw, the job market was really difficult. Finding new grads coming out of school looking for
Hmm.
opportunities, they were having a hard time finding stuff, finding listings available.
Wow.
Practices were having a hard time finding doctors because doctors were staying at home, taking care of their family, taking care of their children's education, things like that. And this year, even in the short period of time that we've started to see the vaccines roll out, and we've seen many practices become like COVID compliant, it's much healthier. Like the process is much more fluid. We're
Hmm.
seeing more practices who are opening up, practices who are looking for doctors, and then even with practices who aren't looking, they're in a position where they can start talking to people again. So, last year was definitely a little bit of a slump, but we're already seeing the industry picking right back up and those
Yeah.
opportunities being out there for people. So I think, speaking with some new grads in the graduating class, it's definitely more hopeful. We've been able to connect them with more opportunities. They've spoken with more opportunities. It's the kind of stuff that we love to hear. Like things
Yeah.
are picking up.
Yeah, that's so great to hear. Yeah, that's fantastic. And like, I would ask you another question, and that is, where should you be looking for jobs? I feel like that's a very common question. And just like I said, I didn't feel like when I was looking, there were a lot of places to look. So where would you guys recommend those that are, maybe looking for their next career or their first career? Where should they be looking?
So to be quite honest, Eyes on Eye Care has actually been a great resource for a lot of candidates that I've spoken to, because not only do we have opportunities nationwide, but we work with all types of practices, private practices, retail, OD, MD, and we've partnered with some big corporations. So oftentimes you will have, an opportunity that kind of matches what you're looking for. Besides us, there is, ZipRecruiter,
Hmm.
Indeed. Also, LinkedIn is a really great resource because a lot of times, if there is a position on there, you can directly contact the hiring manager from there. And kind of what you did as well, cold calling practices and putting your resume out there is also very beneficial for graduates.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing you brought up, and I even mentioned this before too, is that I was very narrow-minded in my job search. I was really looking just I'm in Pittsburgh, for those that don't know. So I'm in Pittsburgh, PA. But, I was looking very specifically at Pittsburgh. But what about if you want to look for a job in another state? Let's just say you're open to it. What does your approach look like then? I mean, because maybe you've been to that state, maybe you haven't been to that state. How do you connect with people from that state? What do you do?
Oh, that's a great question. And I think actually with your search, you did mention being a little bit more narrow. And I think in some respects it can help to be narrow, especially if you are looking into another state. Um, if you have, say, a familiarity with a couple of cities, doing a little
Mhm.
bit of research, looking to those areas, seeing what kind of practices are available there, and then definitely leaning on your network of optometrists as much as possible. Speaking with, preceptors who are familiar with the area, if you happen to have like a rotation there or something. If you know of any colleagues or upperclassmen who moved into the area, reaching out to them first. Really can't overstate the importance of that person-to-person communication. Otherwise, the same resources Preeti mentioned are super important. Being on every job board, uh, making those cold calls, making those cold emails, messaging people directly through LinkedIn. You really want to be in as many places as you can. I know it's a bit of a cop out, but the more resources you use and the more places you
Yeah.
look, the better. And I think specifically looking in other states as well, you want to make sure you're doing your research about licensing in that state. You want to make sure you're doing your research into what the typical patient demographics are, what the extent is that optometrists can practice in the state, things like that, so that you don't end up in a position where you started and you're like, this isn't at all what I expected, and now I've moved to a new state. How am I going to deal with that? And so really doing the research up front. And back to what Preeti said earlier, full-time job, doing the research, looking into it. I think that's got to be the first step, is making sure you know what you're getting into, even looking into a new state.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And another thing that I would say is probably really important for those that are watching, especially if you're really pursuing a new opportunity right now, you apply to a job, is really, what is that timeline look like? I know both of you start working with candidates on this entire process from really
Mhm.
day one and see them through until day one on the job. So how long does the process usually typically take when, someone applies to a job to when they start working?
So it does vary depending on what type of practice you're interviewing with. I can say that there's like a split between the corporate practices and private practices. Sometimes with the corporate, it's a little more structured and they have, the phone interview, then you're going in for a virtual Zoom or an in-person interview. With private practices, you'll see a little bit of a difference because sometimes you'll have maybe multiple phone interviews and you might go into shadow a few days and the process can be maybe a little bit longer or even faster. So it really does vary depending on the practice, because some practice owners like to, have people come in, meet the staff, go to dinner, do a lot of things and have multiple interviews. So it really does vary and depend on the practice. We've seen it anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months. So it really
Yeah.
does vary.
Yeah. And Rob, you had mentioned this before too, is that, things are improving right now. And, there's a lot of practices that are looking to hire now. And obviously there's, candidates out there. And, maybe in those cities where there are a lot of job seekers and maybe not a lot of jobs, it's going to be important to really differentiate yourself. So that leads me to really my next set of questions. And this is just around the whole application process and what makes you stand out as a candidate. So I'm curious to ask you guys, what are the most important sections to really highlight or include in your resume? Because oftentimes that's the first thing an employer is going to see before they even speak to you. It's just your resume.
Yeah, that is actually in part why I always recommend people trying whenever possible to do a little bit of cold calling or cold emailing before, so your personality gets through first.
Yeah.
But in the case that that's not possible, with your resume or your CV, I'm going to give a bit of a cop-out answer again and say it's all important, because it's exactly what you said, Antonio. You have to differentiate yourself. These practices are seeing hundreds of emails, hundreds of applications, hundreds of resumes, and they all blur together after a while, especially if
Yeah.
you're a new graduate. There's a perspective from practices, right? That if you've graduated, if you're on your way to working, you know your stuff. And so at that point, they have to figure out how to separate someone from the rest of the pack. And you do that by providing as much information as you can about yourself. Make yourself a full-bodied person in your resume. You include the patient populations you've worked with in your rotations, include the various pathology that you've seen. If you had a lot of experience in specialty rotations, such as with specialty lenses or vision therapy, you want to make sure to highlight that and expose the breadth of it as much as possible. And there are also some, I won't call them cheap tricks, but things that you may not think about that are just about stylization. You want to have an exciting resume. Too often people just put a bunch of information on a page and it's you wash right over it. And you really want to little pop of color, put a little like stately blue border around it, put your name in, I don't know, verdant green or something. And sometimes that's all it takes. That's enough for someone to look at your resume twice.
Sure. Yeah, no, definitely. And well, let's continue on in this whole process, right? So I send in a resume. I've got I got a great resume, and I get a call in to go to an interview, right? So what are some of the most common questions that you have seen or heard asked during the interview process?
So I feel like the interview process is really for the doctor or the practice owner to really get to know you. They're trying to see what your personality is like. So they may ask questions about what your goals are or what your interests are, but ultimately they are trying to see what type of personality you have, and also just to see how you would be with a patient, how you interact with them. They may treat themselves like they're a patient and you're the doctor. So they really do want to see your personality come out, and they will ask questions about your specialties, your interests, kind of why you want to be an optometrist, what made you choose this career. They've seen all types of questions, but ultimately they really are trying to see what type of a person you are, what your personality is. Would you fit with this practice? Will you be able to have good patient rapport? So I did want to ask Antonio, do you remember any of the questions that you were kind of asked when you were interviewing?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I do, and it's funny you ask, because at the time that I was applying for a job, I had a friend who was also applying for a job, and we both had like interviews relatively around the same time span. And I remember when I went into the practice, just really everything that you said, it was mostly about the questions I was asked was mostly around trying to understand who I was as a person, personality wise. Of course, there was so what is your favorite, like, what are you interested in optometry, right? So
Mhm.
just understanding like, oh, do you like contact lenses? Do you like ocular disease? And why did you want to become an optometrist? So just some stuff about that, about my schooling, different classes I took, but not a lot. Most of the questions I was asked was, they were really around like, what do you like to do for fun?
Mm.
Like, where did you grow up? Is there anything that you do? Do you have any hobbies? And it was kind of interesting because through those questions, I actually got into a really good conversation about like food, honestly, of all things, and just like, yeah, oh, you're Italian. Oh, what do you guys eat on Sundays? Oh, yeah, Polish. This is what, and like, it was great because we really, like, myself and the senior doctor really hit it off,
Mhm.
and that was like a great. And he even told me afterwards, like, that's really all I needed to know, because it really showed me that, like, you and I could work together really well here, because we have similar personalities, and the personality that I have, that patients really attached to, is a personality that you demonstrated. And so those were my questions. My friend was telling me that when he went in, his first question was, "Here's the prescription from an exam. Tell me what glasses you would prescribe for this
Oh,
patient."
wow. Okay.
And I was like, "Whoa, holy smokes! Like, got an interview over there." But
Incredible.
yeah, but so I think you get a variety of things, like you said. But yeah, I do think personality questions are the big one, especially for a practice, because we deal
Yeah.
with people, and
Mhm.
that's important, to be a good communicator and to have that good patient rapport. So, but continuing along in the interview process,
Mhm.
um, how often would you say a doctor should follow up with an employer during the interview process? So, you do your interview, how long should you wait before reaching back out and just kind of, hey, I'm still here, still waiting?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think truly you got to remember, while you're going through the process, your time is every bit as important as the practice's time. And you want to make sure that things are moving along at a timely pace. And also, the person you're working with, if it's the head doctor, they're dealing with this recruiting process, trying to find someone, and they're seeing patients, and they're running their business, and they're doing this. So it's very easy for applications, for communication to fall through the cracks. So after that first phone call, that first interview, sending a follow-up email saying, I really appreciated speaking today. I look forward to moving forward. And if you don't hear back, say a week and a half, shoot out another email. Just wanted to check in again. Really enjoyed the conversation. Would love to provide references or anything else to get things moving forward. And then, honestly, weekly after that, if you start to feel like there isn't a good communication happening, then maybe that's a sign about the compatibility of you in the practice. But I think you should absolutely be active in keeping up with the practice, making sure to let them know that you're interested. Because at the
Mhm.
end of the day, as well, you don't want to seem like someone. You should send out a lot of applications, but you don't
Yeah,
want to seem like someone who is just
right.
absentmindedly send out a lot of applications. You want to seem like someone who's genuinely interested in every opportunity you pursue. And you do that by being present, reaching out, knowing stuff about the practice. So as in communication
Yep.
as you can keep with them, again, just once a week, very casual, not demanding. Why haven't you spoken to me yet? Just very,
Yep.
very much just, I'm still interested. Can be really
Yeah.
beneficial.
Totally. And I know we just have a few minutes left,
Oh
so but
wow.
I do just want to quickly, I know
Oh,
time
wow.
flies, when you're talking about jobs and applying. But so just in the few minutes that we have left, I'm curious if you guys could share what the offer process typically looks like. So maybe let's start there. What does that offer process look like?
So that's a great question. So once again, it really does vary based on, practices. Sometimes you may get a verbal offer on the phone and then get an email later on with an offer letter that you'll have to sign and then get a contract. I always recommend, when you do get that offer, to reach out to a mentor or someone that has already been in the industry, or someone in your class, or a professor, anyone, just to kind of look it over and see if there's any red flags flags. And even us at Eyes On Eyecare, you know, we also look over contracts and offers for candidates as well. You know, we're obviously not a legal, we're not legal advisors, but we try to like help out the candidates by seeing if there's any red flags or, you know, helping them out with that. And I always recommend that if there is something that you're looking for, maybe you're looking for an extra few days of PTO, always trying to negotiate. It doesn't hurt to ask if, you know, you're looking for something, because most of the times those doctors are going to be a little bit flexible, and, you know, they really want you to be happy and for you to, you know, feel like you actually picked a job that you're happy about. So they'll, you know, do a bit of changes here and there for you. So it never hurts to try to negotiate. But I definitely do recommend having someone look it over.
Yeah, and you know, on the topic, we had a great talk earlier today on negotiation, and continuing a couple of questions just around money and compensation. What are you seeing in terms of positions that are paying the highest rates?
Yeah, so I could definitely say what we typically see is if you're willing to venture out a little bit from the heavily populated areas, a little bit further away from the cities, that's typically where you're going to see a little bit of the higher salary, maybe the more generous benefits, largely because they want to attract people to those areas. You know, most people, they get out of school and they shoot right for Dallas, Austin, they shoot for New York City, Washington is a big one now as well, Seattle, Washington. And everyone wants to live right in the city. They want to have an easy commute to their jobs. Obviously, nobody wants to spend an hour in traffic every day. But what ends up happening is nobody looks into the adjacent areas. And so those practices have to be a little bit more giving in letting you on and helping you out. And so typically, if you're willing to just venture off the beaten path a little bit, I think you'll find opportunities where there's a little bit more flexibility and opportunity for making more.
Yeah, and just a couple of really last minute questions here, but for the new grads out there, and this is really, you know, applicable to you guys, but you know, in terms of licensure, how long does that process usually take?
So it varies by state. You know, some states offer like 2 law exams or board, you know, per year. We actually do have a really great article on our site. I think it's a complete guide on how to get your optometry license in all 50 states. I've actually had a lot of candidates that I refer that over to, and it has like all the states on there, a link to the actual state site, and it gives you like what the fees are, what you need to provide to the state, and all of that. So that's a great resource, but it really does vary by state. Some states are maybe a month or two after graduation you can get it. Some it might take a little longer as well.
Yeah, and so I just want to end on this. So I guess give me your 30 seconds on what your thoughts are on the future employment outlook in the industry.
It looks good. No, but seriously, we are seeing every month more practices who are looking, more practices who are interested in speaking with candidates. So again, if you're willing to look a little bit off the beaten path, if you're willing to make that jump with making the cold call, making a cold email, reaching out to practices, doing some research, you'll find opportunities out there. And I think we're just going to keep seeing those opportunities grow and grow and grow as everyone gets a little bit more accustomed to this post-COVID life. Or we're not post yet, but you know, getting there.
We follow you. Yeah, totally. Well, listen, thank you guys so much for joining me. You know, it's great seeing you guys, and can't wait to see you guys again. But so thanks again, and bonus raffle code real quick for those viewers. The bonus raffle code for this session is Luxottica. So write that down, enter it in, get another raffle ticket. And up next is our Eye Care Careers Thought Leadership panel. It's going to be great. And in this panel, we'll be reflecting back on 2020, looking at the strides that we've made and taking a look at what's coming in 2021. So we'll be live back on again in about 5 minutes. So see you then.